Hi, I'm Andrew Harris. They banned me from Thanksgiving. Said I wasn't family anymore. Said the house, her house, wasn't a place for someone like me. Her mother stood at that door with her arms crossed and told me I had no right to be there. Her brother laughed, called me a freeloader who married up and fell down. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 3 months before my wife passed, she'd made a choice. A quiet one, a legal one. And when I pulled up to that Thanksgiving dinner they tried to lock me out of, I didn't come to beg. I came to reclaim what was mine. But before we go any further, tell me, where are you watching from? Have you ever been shut out by people who were supposed to be family? Drop a comment below. Because this story, it's not just about me. It's about standing your ground when the whole world tells you to disappear. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The driveway looked the same as it always did, long, winding, lined with oak trees that turned gold every November like clockwork. I'd driven down this path 100 times, maybe more. But this time felt different. This time, I wasn't invited. I parked my truck near the edge of the property, just past the stone mailbox that read Thornfield Estate in brass letters that hadn't tarnished in 20 years. The air smelled like burning wood and roasted turkey, the kind of smell that used to mean warmth and laughter. Now it just smelled like a battlefield I wasn't supposed to enter. I stepped out, adjusted my jacket, and took a long breath. My hands were steady. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. That was enough. The house stood 3 stories tall, wrapped in ivy and old money. It wasn't a mansion. Not quite, but it was close. The kind of place that made you feel small the first time you saw it. I remember pulling up here 6 years ago with my wife, back when she was still alive, back when her family tolerated me because she insisted. They smiled to my face and whispered behind my back. I knew it then, I know it now. But today, none of that mattered. I walked up the front steps, gravel crunching under my boots. The door was already open a crack, voices spilling out from inside, laughter, the clinking of glasses. Someone was telling a story, probably her brother. He always dominated the room. I knocked twice, firm, polite. The voices stopped. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. Then the door swung open, and there she was, Victoria Thornfield, my late wife's mother. She looked at me the way you'd look at a stain on expensive carpet. "Andrew?" she said flatly. Not a greeting, just an acknowledgement that I existed. "Victoria," I replied, keeping my tone even. "Happy Thanksgiving." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "We didn't expect you." "I know." She didn't move, didn't step aside, just stood there blocking the doorway like a sentinel. Behind her, I could see the dining room. The long table was set with fine china, crystal glasses, candles flickering in silver holders. Her son, Garrett, sat near the head of the table, leaning back in his chair with a smirk already forming on his face. Her daughter-in-law, Vanessa, whispered something to the woman beside her. They both glanced at me, then looked away. "This is a family gathering," Victoria said slowly, like she was explaining something to someone who didn't understand basic concepts. "And you're not family anymore." I nodded. "I understand how you feel." "Do you?" Her eyes narrowed. "Because, from where I'm standing, you're trespassing." The word landed heavy. Trespassing. On the property my wife grew up in. On the land she loved. On the house where we spent every holiday for 6 years until cancer took her from me 8 months ago. I didn't flinch. I'd prepared for this. "I'm not here to cause trouble," I said. "I just want to spend Thanksgiving where she would have wanted me to be." Victoria's jaw tightened. "She's gone, Andrew. And whatever claim you think you had to this family died with her." Garrett stood up from the table, drink in hand, and strolled toward the door. He was tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of guy who'd been told he was important his whole life and believed it. He stopped just behind his mother, grinning like he'd already won something. "You heard her," he said, voice dripping with mock politeness. "This isn't your house. It never was, so why don't you do yourself a favor and leave before this gets embarrassing?" I looked at him, really looked at him. The same guy who used to make jokes about my job, my car, my clothes. The same guy who once told me at a Christmas party that I was lucky his sister had low standards. I reached into my jacket pocket. Slowly, carefully, Victoria tensed. Garrett's smirk faltered just a little. I pulled out a folded envelope, plain, white, slightly worn at the edges. I held it up so they could both see it. "What's that?" Garrett asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. "Proof," I said simply. Victoria's eyes flicked to the envelope, then back to my face. "Proof of what?" I didn't answer. Not yet. I just stood there, holding it, letting the silence do the work. From inside the house, someone called out, "Who is it, Mom?" Victoria didn't turn around. She kept her eyes locked on mine. "No one important." That stung, but I didn't let it show. I'd been called worse by better people. "I'm not leaving," I said quietly. "Not until you hear what I have to say." Garrett laughed. Actually laughed. "You think we care about anything you have to say? You were a placeholder, man. A phase. She would have moved on eventually if she'd lived long enough." The words hit like a slap, but I didn't move, didn't react. I just kept my eyes on Victoria. "Is that what you all think?" I asked. She didn't answer, but the silence told me everything. I took a step forward. Not aggressive, just present. "Then let me ask you something. If I meant nothing, why did she spend her last 3 months making sure I was protected?" Victoria blinked. "Just once. But I saw it." Garrett's grin faded. "What are you talking about?" I held up the envelope again. "This is a deed transfer. Signed, notarized, and filed with the county 2 months before she passed. She transferred ownership of this house to me." The air went still. Victoria's face drained of color. Garrett froze mid-breath. From inside, someone dropped a fork. The metallic clatter echoed through the entryway. "That's a lie," Garrett said, voice suddenly sharp. "That's impossible." I unfolded the envelope slowly, pulled out the document and held it up. The county seal was visible even from where they stood. My name was typed clearly at the top. Andrew Michael Harris, owner of record. "She knew," I said softly. "She knew you'd try to erase me, so she made sure you couldn't." Victoria's hand gripped the doorframe. Her knuckles went white. "This is fraud. You coerced her." She was sick. She wasn't thinking clearly. "She was thinking perfectly clearly," I said, "and she had a lawyer present, a witness. Everything was done by the book." Garrett stepped forward, chest puffed out, trying to reclaim control. "You think a piece of paper gives you the right to walk in here? You think we're just going to roll over?" I met his eyes, calm and steady. "I think you don't have a choice." Victoria's voice cracked. "Get out." I shook my head. "I'm not going anywhere. This is my house now. And if you don't believe me, call your lawyer, call the county office, call whoever you want. But I'm walking through that door and I'm sitting at that table, because that's what she wanted." For a long moment, no one moved. The wind rustled through the oak trees. Somewhere inside, a timer went off in the kitchen. Life continued, indifferent to the standoff happening at the threshold. Then I took one step forward. Victoria stepped back. And I walked inside. The house was exactly as I remembered it. High ceilings, dark wood floors polished to a shine, walls lined with family portraits going back 3 generations. Everything in its place. Everything perfect. Everything cold. I stood in the entryway, and every eye in the dining room turned toward me. There were about 12 people scattered around the table and nearby chairs. Cousins, aunts, uncles, family friends, people I'd met at weddings and funerals, people who smiled at me once and forgot my name the next day. No one said hello. Garrett moved past me, shoulders tight, and planted himself near the head of the table. Victoria followed, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She didn't look at me, just walked straight to her seat and picked up her wineglass like I was a inconvenience she could ignore into non-existence. I stayed near the door, hands in my pockets, waiting. One of the cousins, a woman in her 40s named Diane, leaned toward the man beside her and whispered something. He chuckled softly. Another guest, a silver-haired man I recognized as Victoria's brother, cleared his throat and looked down at his plate. "Well?" Garrett said loudly, breaking the silence. "This is awkward." A few people laughed, nervous, polite laughter, the kind that fills space but means nothing. I didn't move. Garrett gestured toward me with his glass. "Everyone, you remember Andrew, right? My sister's husband. Well, widower, I guess. Though I'm not sure that title still applies when you're clearly not welcome." More uncomfortable laughter. Someone coughed. Victoria set her glass down with a soft clink. Garrett, don't. Don't what? He said, feigning innocence. I'm just stating facts. He wasn't invited. He's not family. And yet here he is, standing in our house like he owns the place. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. I smiled. Just a little. Funny you should say that. His expression flickered, just for a second. But I saw it. Vanessa, Garrett's wife, leaned forward. She was always the diplomatic one, the peacekeeper. Andrew, maybe this isn't the best time. Emotions are high. It's the holidays. Why don't we all just take a breath and talk about this later? There's nothing to talk about, Victoria said coldly. He needs to leave. I pulled the document out again, unfolded it fully this time, and held it up so everyone could see. This house was transferred to me by your daughter, my wife. 2 months before she died. It's legal, it's binding, and it's already filed with the county. The room went silent, not the polite kind, the stunned kind. Diane's mouth fell open. The silver-haired uncle set down his fork. Vanessa blinked rapidly, looking between me and Garrett like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Garrett stood up slowly. That's bullshit. It's public record, I said calmly. You can look it up yourself. Victoria's face had gone from pale to flushed. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the edge of the table. She wouldn't do that. She wouldn't cut us out like that. She didn't cut you out, I said. She just made sure I wasn't cut out. Why? Garrett demanded, stepping closer. Why would she do that? I looked at him. Really looked at him. Because she knew what you'd do the second she was gone. His jaw clenched. We loved her. You loved her money, I said quietly. You loved her name. You loved what she represented, but you didn't love her. Vanessa gasped. Someone else muttered something under their breath. Victoria stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. How dare you, she said, voice shaking with rage. How dare you stand in this house and accuse us of not loving her? We are her family. We raised her. We were there for her. You weren't there when she was dying, I said. The words hung in the air like a blade. Victoria's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I continued, voice steady. I was there, every day, every treatment, every sleepless night. I held her hand when she couldn't stand. I read to her when she was too tired to keep her eyes open. I was there when she cried because the pain was too much. And you know who else was there? No one. Garrett pointed at me. That's not fair. We were dealing with things. We were grieving. She wasn't dead yet, I said. And you'd already moved on. The silence that followed was suffocating. Diane stood up, clutching her napkin. I think I need some air. She left the room quickly, heels echoing down the hallway. 2 other guests exchanged glances and quietly excused themselves. The silver-haired uncle stared into his wineglass like it held answers. Victoria sat back down, slowly, like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. Her hands were still shaking. Garrett ran a hand through his hair, pacing near the fireplace. This is insane. You can't just walk in here and take everything. I'm not taking anything, I said. I'm keeping what was given to me. By a woman who was dying, he shot back. Who was on medication. Who wasn't in her right mind. I shook my head. She was sharper than you ever gave her credit for. Vanessa stood, placing a hand on Garrett's arm. Maybe we should call the lawyer. Figure this out properly. There's nothing to figure out, I said. But if you want to call someone, go ahead. I'll wait. Victoria finally looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steel. You won't get away with this. I held her gaze. I already have. She stood again, this time steadier, and walked past me without another word. Her footsteps disappeared into another part of the house. A door slammed somewhere upstairs. Garrett watched her go, then turned back to me. You think this is over? I think it just started, I said. He stared at me for a long moment, jaw working, like he was chewing on words he couldn't spit out. Then he grabbed his coat from the rack near the door and stormed out, Vanessa trailing behind him. The remaining guests sat frozen, unsure whether to stay or flee. I walked slowly to the table, pulled out a chair, and sat down. No one stopped me. I looked at the spread in front of me. Turkey, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, rolls still steaming in a basket. Everything perfect. Everything untouched. I reached for a roll, tore it in half, and took a bite. And for the first time in 8 months, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The tension didn't break, it just shifted, simmered, settled into the walls like smoke after a fire. I sat at that table for 10 minutes. Maybe 15. No one spoke. A few guests picked at their food, but most just stared at their plates or glanced toward the door like they were calculating escape routes. The silver-haired uncle finally stood, muttered something about needing to check on Victoria, and left the room. 2 others followed shortly after. Eventually only 3 people remained. Diane, who had come back in but hadn't sat down. A younger man I didn't recognize, maybe mid-20s, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. And Vanessa's mother, Eleanor, a rail-thin woman in her 60s who had always looked at me like I was something stuck to her shoe. Eleanor set down her fork with deliberate precision. "This is disgraceful." I looked up. "What is?" "This," she said, gesturing vaguely at me. "You. Coming here, disrupting a family gathering, flaunting some piece of paper like it gives you the right to humiliate people." "I'm not here to humiliate anyone," I said. "I'm here because this is my home." She scoffed. "Your home. You were married to her for 6 years. 6. We've been in this family for decades. You think that gives you more claim than blood?" "I think it gives me exactly what she wanted me to have." Eleanor leaned forward, eyes sharp. "She was sick. Vulnerable. You took advantage of that." I set down the roll I'd been holding. "I took care of her. There's a difference." "You isolated her," Eleanor continued, voice rising. "You kept her away from us, made her think we didn't care." "I didn't have to make her think anything," I said quietly. "You did that yourselves." Her face flushed. "How dare you?" The young man shifted uncomfortably. Diane looked between us like she was watching a car crash in slow motion. "I dare," I said, "because it's the truth. And the truth doesn't stop being true just because it's uncomfortable." Eleanor stood abruptly, chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You're going to regret this." She swept out of the room, taking her indignation with her. The young man mumbled an excuse and followed. Diane lingered for a moment, eyes uncertain, then she too slipped away. And then I was alone. I sat there in the silence, surrounded by food no one had eaten, in a house full of people who wanted me gone. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated, but all I felt was tired. I stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the front yard. The oak trees swayed gently in the wind. The sun was starting to dip lower, casting long shadows across the grass. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a car engine start. Then another. The exodus had begun. I pulled out my phone and opened the Photos app. Scrolled until I found the one I was looking for. It was from 2 years ago, Thanksgiving. She was standing in this exact room, holding a pie she'd made from scratch, laughing at something I'd said. Her hair was still thick then, her eyes still bright. She looked happy. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I heard footsteps behind me, heavy, deliberate. I turned. Garrett stood in the doorway, coat still on, hands in his pockets. His face was unreadable. "Thought you left," I said. "I did," he replied. "Then I came back." "Why?" He stepped into the room, stopped a few feet away. "Because I need to understand something." I waited. "Why?" he asked. "Why would she do this? Why would she give you everything and leave us with nothing?" "She didn't leave you with nothing," I said. "She left you with exactly what you gave her." His eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I closed the photo app, slipped my phone back into my pocket. "It means you were never here, Garrett. Not when it mattered. Not when she needed you." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" I asked. "When was the last time you visited her before she got sick? Not for a holiday, not for an obligation, just because you wanted to see your sister." He didn't answer. "I'll tell you when," I continued. "Never. You called on her birthday, sent a card at Christmas, showed up when there was food on the table, but you didn't see her. You didn't know her." "And you did?" he shot back. "Yeah," I said. I did. He shook his head, jaw tight. You're rewriting history. Making yourself the hero. I'm not a hero, I said. I'm just the guy who stayed. Garrett stared at me for a long moment. Then he pulled something out of his coat pocket. A folded piece of paper. He tossed it onto the table between us. That's a letter, he said. From her, to me. Written 3 weeks before she died. I looked at the paper but didn't touch it. Go on, he said. Read it. I picked it up slowly, unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky but unmistakably hers. It read, Garrett, I know we haven't been close. I know I've let you down. But I need you to understand that Andrew is good. He's kind. And when I'm gone, I need you to let him be. Don't fight him. Don't punish him for loving me. Please. For once, just let something be simple. I folded the letter carefully and set it back on the table. Garrett's voice was hoarse. She asked me not to fight you. And yet here you are, I said. He looked away. I can't just let this go. Why not? Because it's not fair, he said, voice breaking slightly. She was my sister. This was our home. And now you're taking it away. I'm not taking anything, I said. She gave it to me. There's a difference. He wiped at his eyes quickly, angry at himself for showing emotion. I don't know how to let this go. Then don't, I said. But don't pretend this is about fairness. This is about control. And you don't have it anymore. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than anger. I saw grief, raw and unprocessed and desperate. I miss her, he said quietly. So do I. He nodded once, then turned and walked toward the door. He stopped at the threshold, hand on the frame. This isn't over, he said without looking back. I know. He left. And once again, I was alone. I walked back to the window, looked out at the fading light, and wondered how long I could hold this ground before the walls came down. Because I knew they would. This was just the beginning. The house settled into an eerie quiet after everyone left. I could hear the old grandfather clock in the hallway ticking, each second marking time in a space that felt too big and too empty all at once. I walked through the room slowly, taking inventory of what was now technically mine but still felt like it belonged to ghosts. The living room was pristine, untouched. Like a museum exhibit of a life that used to exist. Her mother's favorite chair sat by the fireplace, the cushion still bearing the faint impression of someone who'd sat there too many times to count. The bookshelf held leather-bound volumes that no one actually read, just displayed. Everything here was for show, always had been. I made my way upstairs, past the family portraits that lined the wall. Her great-grandfather in his military uniform, her grandmother on her wedding day, her parents standing stiff and formal in front of this very house 30 years ago. And then her, my wife, smiling in her high school graduation photo, young and hopeful and unaware of how heavy this family name would become. I stopped at the third door on the left. Her old bedroom. The one she grew up in before we got married, before we moved into the smaller guest house on the east side of the property. I'd only been in here a handful of times. It always felt like trespassing, even when she invited me in. I turned the handle, the door creaked open. The room was exactly as she'd left it. The bed was made with military precision, pale blue comforter tucked tight. Her desk sat beneath the window, books stacked neatly, pens in a ceramic cup she'd made in middle school art class. A corkboard hung on the wall, covered in old photos, ticket stubs, pressed flowers, pieces of a life preserved like amber. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me. The air smelled faintly of lavender. She used to keep sachets in her drawers. Said it reminded her of her grandmother, the only person in this family who'd ever made her feel seen. I walked to the desk, ran my fingers along the edge. Dust had settled in a thin layer. No one had been in here for months. Maybe longer. I sat down in her chair and looked out the window. From here you could see the entire front yard, the long driveway, the iron gates at the entrance. This was her view growing up. This was what she saw every morning. A beautiful prison with perfectly trimmed hedges. I opened the top desk drawer. Inside were the usual things. Old notebooks, highlighters, a calculator from college. But beneath the stack of folders I found something else. a small wooden box, about the size of a deck of cards with a brass latch. I pulled it out, set it on the desk. The wood was smooth, well kept. I flipped the latch and opened it. Inside was a USB drive, just one. Black, unmarked, sitting on a bed of velvet like it was something precious. I stared at it for a long time. She'd been meticulous about organization. Everything labeled, everything filed. If she left something unmarked, it was intentional, it was hidden. I pulled out my phone but then thought better of it. Whatever was on this drive, I needed to see it properly. I needed context. I closed the box, slipped it into my jacket pocket, and stood. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye, a frame on the nightstand face down. I walked over, picked it up, turned it over. It was a photo of her and Garrett. They couldn't have been more than 8 and 10 years old. Both grinning, arms around each other, standing in front of a lake I didn't recognize. They looked happy. Close. Like siblings who actually liked each other. I set the frame back down, face up this time. Then I left the room and went downstairs to find a laptop. The study was on the first floor, tucked behind the kitchen. It had been her father's office before he passed 5 years ago. Dark wood paneling, built-in bookshelves, a massive oak desk that probably weighed more than a car. Everything about this room screamed old money and older traditions. I sat at the desk, opened the laptop I knew would be in the bottom drawer. It was an older model, but it worked. I powered it on, waited for it to boot up, then plugged in the USB drive. A single folder appeared, labeled only with a date, November 14th. 3 weeks before she died. I double-clicked. Inside were 3 video files, each titled with a name: Victoria, Garrett, Andrew. My hand hovered over the mouse. My heart was pounding now, blood rushing in my ears. I clicked on the one labeled Andrew first. The video player opened. The screen was black for a moment. Then her face appeared. She looked tired, thinner than I remembered. Her hair was wrapped in a soft scarf, the kind she wore after she'd lost most of it to chemo. But her eyes were clear, focused, determined. "Hi, baby," she said softly, and my throat closed up immediately. I hadn't heard her voice in 8 months, hadn't seen her move, hadn't watched her smile. And now here she was, talking to me from beyond the grave. "If you're watching this," she continued, "then I'm gone. And if you found this in my old room, then you're probably sitting in my dad's office trying to figure out what the hell I was thinking." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Even in death, she knew me. "I need you to know something," she said, leaning closer to the camera. "Everything I did because I love you, not loved. Love, present tense. Because wherever I am now, that doesn't change." Tears blurred my vision. I wiped them away quickly, didn't want to miss a second. "I know my family is going to fight you," she said. "I know they're going to make this hard. They're going to question the transfer, question my state of mind, question whether you manipulated me. And I need you to hear this directly from me. You didn't. You never did. Every choice I made was mine. Every signature, every legal document, every conversation with my lawyer, mine." She paused, looked down for a moment, then back up. "I gave you the house because it's the only thing in this family that ever felt like home. And that's because of you, not them. You made it bearable. You made it real. And I couldn't stand the thought of them taking that from you the second I was gone." She smiled then, soft and sad. "I recorded messages from my mom and Garrett too. I don't know if they'll ever watch them. I don't know if they'll care. But I needed to say my piece, just in case." She leaned back, took a breath. "There's something else on this drive. Something I need you to see. It's in a folder called Evidence. I'm sorry I didn't tell you before. I'm sorry I kept it from you. But I was scared. And I didn't want to hurt you more than this disease already was." She looked directly into the camera. "I love you, Andrew Harris. And I'm so sorry I didn't get more time with you. But thank you. For every moment, for every kindness, for staying when everyone else left." The video ended. I sat there in the dark, staring at the frozen frame of her face. My chest ached, my hands were shaking, but I wasn't broken, not yet. I went back to the folder. Found the one labeled Evidence. Inside were documents, scanned letters, email threads, financial records, and a subfolder labeled Recordings. I opened the letters first. They were between Victoria and a lawyer I didn't recognize. Dated over a year ago, the language was formal, clinical. But the intent was clear. Victoria had been trying to have my wife declared mentally incompetent. She'd hired a psychiatrist to evaluate her, tried to build a case that she wasn't fit to make her own legal decisions. My wife had refused to cooperate. The case went nowhere. But the fact that it happened at all made my blood run cold. I opened the email threads next. Messages between Garrett and a financial advisor, discussions about the estate, projections about property value, plans to sell the house the moment it became available. He'd been circling like a vulture for months, maybe longer. And then I opened the recordings folder. There were 6 audio files, each one labeled with a date and a location. I clicked the first one. Static, then voices, her mother and Garrett talking in what sounded like the dining room. Victoria's voice came through clear and cold. We need to make sure he doesn't get anything. The moment she's gone, we contest the will. We say she was coerced. Garrett responded, what if she left something in writing? Something that contradicts that? Then we bury it, Victoria said flatly. We have the resources. We have the lawyers. He has nothing. He won't fight us. My hands gripped the edge of the desk. Garrett laughed. I almost feel bad for him. He actually thinks he's part of this family. He was never part of this family, Victoria said. He was a mistake she made when she was young and naive, and we'll correct it. The recording ended. I sat back, staring at the screen. My mind was racing. She'd recorded them. She'd known. She'd heard everything they said behind closed doors, and she'd documented it. Not for revenge, but for protection. For me. I clicked on the next recording. Then the next. Each one was worse than the last. Plans to discredit me. Conversations about hiding assets. Jokes about how I'd be gone within a month of her passing. They'd been planning this for over a year, and she'd known the entire time. I closed the laptop, leaned back in the chair, and stared at the ceiling. The house suddenly felt different. Not like a prize I'd won, but like a battlefield I'd inherited. And the war had already started long before I ever knew I was a soldier. I pulled out my phone and made a call. It rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Cole Freeman speaking. Cole was a lawyer, an old friend from college. We'd kept in touch over the years, mostly through holiday cards and the occasional beer when he was in town. But he was good. Sharp. And most importantly, he didn't owe the Thornfield family anything. Cole, it's Andrew Harris. Andrew, hey, long time. How are you holding up? I need your help, I said, and I need it fast. There was a pause, then his tone shifted. Professional, focused. What's going on? I'm about to be in the fight of my life, I said, and I need someone in my corner who knows how to hit back. Tell me everything, he said. And I did. The call with Cole lasted 40 minutes. I laid out everything, the house transfer, the confrontation at Thanksgiving, the recordings, the emails. By the time I finished, he was silent for a long moment. You still there? I asked. Yeah, he said slowly. I'm just processing. Andrew. This is bigger than a property dispute. If those recordings are authentic, and if they show premeditated intent to defraud you, we're talking about a legitimate legal case, not just civil, potentially criminal. I rubbed my eyes. I don't want to destroy them. I just want them to leave me alone. They're not going to leave you alone, Cole said bluntly. Not unless you make it clear that fighting you will cost them more than it's worth. You need to be prepared to go scorched earth if necessary. I thought about that, about what it would mean, about whether my wife would have wanted that. Let me think about it, I said. Don't think too long, Cole warned. If they're already planning to contest the transfer, they're going to move fast. We need to be faster. I'll call you tomorrow, I said. We hung up. I sat in the study for a while longer, listening to the house settle. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked. The wind rattled a window. The old radiator clanked as it kicked on. These were the sounds of her childhood, the soundtrack to a life I'd only seen pieces of. I stood, walked to the bookshelf, and ran my fingers along the spines. Most of them were classics: Dickens, Austen, Hemingway. Books that looked impressive but probably hadn't been opened in decades. But on the bottom shelf, pushed to the back, I found something different. A row of journals, leather-bound, each one a different color, I pulled one out. The cover was soft, worn. I opened it to the first page. Her handwriting. Dated 15 years ago. Dear Diary, it began, and I almost smiled despite everything. She'd been 17, still in high school, still figuring out who she was. I flipped through the pages. Entries about school, friends, arguments with her mother. Normal teenage things. But then, I found an entry dated late November, the week of Thanksgiving. Mom told me today that I need to be more like Garrett, more focused, more ambitious, more willing to put the family first. I told her I just wanted to study art. She laughed. Actually laughed. Said art was a hobby, not a future. I don't think she understands that I don't want her future. I want my own. I turned the page. Garrett told me I'm being selfish, that this family has given me everything and I owe them. But I don't feel like they've given me anything except expectations I never asked for. I feel like I'm suffocating. Further down, another entry. I met someone today. His name is Andrew. He works at the community center downtown, helps kids with after-school programs. We talked for an hour about nothing important. Art, music, books. He didn't ask me about my family once. It was the best conversation I've had in years. I stopped, stared at the page. That was me. Our first conversation. I remembered that day she'd come in to volunteer, said she wanted to do something that mattered. I'd thought she was just another college kid looking for resume padding. But she kept coming back, week after week. And somewhere along the way, we became friends. Then more. I kept reading. Andrew doesn't look at me like I'm a Thornfield. He looks at me like I'm just me. I didn't know how much I needed that until now. I closed the journal carefully, set it back on the shelf. My chest felt tight. She'd been writing about me before I even knew she saw me as anything more than a coworker. I pulled out another journal, this one darker, more recent. I flipped to a random page. Mom asked me again today when Andrew and I are going to have kids. Not if, when. Like it's a foregone conclusion, like my body is just another asset to be managed. I told her we're not ready. She said I'm running out of time. I'm 32. Not dead. Another entry, a few pages later. Garrett made a joke at dinner about Andrew being a charity case. Everyone laughed. Even Dad smiled. I didn't say anything. I should have. But I didn't. I hate that I didn't. The entries got darker as I read on. I'm tired of being the bridge between two worlds. Andrew's world makes sense. It's simple. Honest. My family's world is all smoke and mirrors. Everything is transactional. Everything has a price. I don't know how much longer I can keep one foot in each. Then, dated about 3 years ago. I'm sick. The doctors confirmed it today. Stage 2. Treatable, they said. But I know what that means. I know what's coming. I told Andrew first. He cried. Then he held me and told me we'd fight it together. I told my mom an hour later. She asked if I'd updated my will. I stopped reading, set the journal down, walked to the window. Outside, the sun had fully set. The property was dark, except for the lights along the driveway. I could see my truck parked near the edge, small and out of place among the manicured perfection of this estate. I thought about those journal entries, about the girl who'd felt trapped in her own family, about the woman who'd fought so hard to carve out a space where she could breathe, and about the choice she'd made at the end to give that space to me. This wasn't just a house, it was her rebellion, her final act of defiance, her way of saying she'd chosen her own path, even if she couldn't walk it anymore. I heard a sound behind me, a soft creak. I turned quickly. No one there. Just the house. Just the memories. I walked back to the desk, sat down, and opened the laptop again. I clicked on the video labeled Victoria. I needed to know what she'd said to her mother. Needed to understand what she'd been thinking. The video loaded. Her face appeared again, but this time her expression was different. Harder. More resolved. Mom, she said, and even through the screen I could feel the weight of that word. If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you're probably angry. Probably feel betrayed, like I took something from you. She paused, looked directly at the camera. But I need you to understand something. You took from me first. You took my choices, my voice, my autonomy. Every time you made a decision about my life without asking me. Every time you prioritized the family name over my happiness. Every time you made me feel like I was a disappointment for wanting something different." Her voice didn't waver. "I gave Andrew the house because he's the only person who ever let me be myself. The only person who didn't try to shape me into something I wasn't. And I know you'll hate him for it. I know you'll fight him. But I'm asking you, just this once, to let something go. Let him have this. Let me have made one choice that was entirely mine." She looked down, then back up. "I love you, Mom. I do. But I can't keep sacrificing myself to make you comfortable. Not anymore. Not even in death." The video ended. I sat there in the silence, feeling the full weight of what she'd done. This wasn't just about property. This was about a lifetime of being told she didn't matter unless she fit the mold. And this was her breaking it. Completely. Irrevocably. I clicked on the last video. The one labeled Garrett. Her face appeared one more time. "Hey, big brother," she said, and there was sadness in her voice now. Real, deep sadness. "I wish things were different between us. I wish we were still those kids at the lake, before everything got complicated, before the family came between us." She wiped at her eyes. "I know you think I'm punishing you by giving Andrew the house, but I'm not. I'm protecting someone I love from people who were ready to erase him the second I was gone. And yeah, that includes you." Her voice cracked slightly. "I heard you, Garrett. I heard the things you said about him, about me, about how we were a mistake you'd fix. And it broke my heart, because I thought, even after everything, you'd have my back. But you chose them. You always chose them." She took a breath. "I hope one day you understand why I did this. I hope you find someone who makes you want to fight the way Andrew made me want to fight. And I hope you let yourself be loved the way I was loved, fully, without conditions." The screen went black. I closed the laptop, leaned back, stared at the ceiling. She'd known everything, every betrayal, every whispered plan, and she'd still tried to reach them, still left them messages, still hoped they'd understand. But I knew they wouldn't. People like that don't change. They just dig in deeper. My phone buzzed. A text from Cole. "Thought about it yet?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "Yeah? Let's go scorched earth?" Cole called me back within 15 minutes of my text. His voice was sharp, all business now. No more friendly concern, just the focused energy of a lawyer who'd locked onto a target. "First thing tomorrow morning, we file a motion to produce," he said. "We get ahead of this. If they're planning to contest the transfer, we make them show their cards first. We force them to submit any evidence they have, and then we dismantle it piece by piece." "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Everything. The deed transfer documents, the recordings, the emails, her medical records if you have them. Anything that proves she was of sound mind when she made these decisions. We build an airtight case before they even know what hit them." I thought about the USB drive still sitting on the desk, about the videos I'd just watched. I have more than enough. "Good. Meet me at my office at 8. Bring it all. And Andrew, one more thing." "Yeah?" "Be ready for them to get dirty. If they're willing to plan this kind of thing behind your back, they won't hesitate to drag your name through the mud publicly. They'll look for anything they can use. Old debts, past relationships, anything that makes you look unstable or opportunistic." "There's nothing to find," I said. "There's always something," Cole replied. "We just need to make sure we control the narrative before they do." We hung up. I spent the next hour gathering everything I could find. I made copies of the recordings, printed out the email threads, organized the legal documents into a folder. By the time I finished, it was past midnight. I should have been exhausted, should have collapsed into bed, but I was wired, running on adrenaline and anger and something else I couldn't quite name. Purpose, maybe. Or just the refusal to let them win. I walked through the house one more time, turning off lights, checking locks. The place felt different now that I was alone in it. Every shadow seemed heavier, every creak louder. This house had held so many secrets for so long. Now they were all spilling out, and I was standing in the middle of the flood. I ended up back in her old bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and looked around at the remnants of a life she'd outgrown but never fully left behind. The trophies from high school debate team, the college acceptance letters pinned to the corkboard, the stack of art supplies she'd kept, even though her mother told her art was a waste of time. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You made a mistake coming here." I stared at it. No name, no context, just a threat wrapped in 9 words. Another text came through. You think you've won, but this is just the beginning. We will take everything from you. I didn't respond, didn't give them the satisfaction. Just took a screenshot and forwarded it to Cole with a message. It's starting. His response came back immediately. Document everything. Don't engage. Let them dig their own grave. I set the phone down and lay back on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep wasn't going to come. Not tonight. So I just lay there, listening to the house breathe around me and waited for morning. When dawn finally broke, I was already showered, dressed, and sitting in my truck with a folder full of evidence on the passenger seat. I drove into town, stopped at a coffee shop I used to go to with her, and ordered 2 coffees out of habit before remembering she wasn't there to drink the second one. I sat in the parking lot for a moment, holding both cups, feeling the weight of that small, stupid mistake. Then I poured the extra one out the window and drove to Cole's office. He was waiting for me in the lobby, looking sharp in a suit that probably cost more than my truck. We shook hands, and he led me upstairs to a conference room with a long table and walls lined with law books that probably hadn't been touched in years. Let's see what we're working with, he said. I opened the folder and spread everything out. The deed transfer, the notarized documents, the recordings, the emails, the videos. Cole went through each piece methodically, taking notes, occasionally pausing to listen to an audio file or read a particularly damning email. After about 20 minutes, he sat back and whistled low. This is gold, absolute gold. They handed you a slam dunk case. So we can stop them? Stop them, Andrew, we can destroy them. If they contest this transfer, we counterclaim with evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. We expose every conversation, every plan. We make it so ugly that no judge in their right mind would side with them. I nodded slowly. And what happens to them? Cole shrugged. Depends on how far they push it. Best case for them, they drop the whole thing and slink away. Worst case, criminal charges, financial penalties, public humiliation. This kind of thing doesn't just go away quietly. I thought about Victoria, about Garrett, about the smug certainty they'd had when they told me I didn't belong. Good. Cole leaned forward. You sure about this? Once we file, there's no going back. This becomes public record. The media will pick it up. Your name will be in the papers. So will theirs. It's going to get messy. It's already messy, I said. I'm just making sure I'm not the only one covered in mud. He smiled. Then let's get to work. We spent the next 3 hours drafting the motion. Cole was thorough, meticulous, and ruthless in the way he structured the argument. Every claim was backed by evidence. Every piece of evidence was contextualized. By the time we finished, it read less like a legal document and more like a prosecutor's closing argument. We'll file this by end of day, Cole said. They'll have 72 hours to respond. And Andrew, when they do, it's going to come fast and hard. Be ready. I left his office just after noon and drove back to the house. The property looked different in daylight, less imposing. More like what it actually was. Just a big house with too many rooms and too much history. I parked and walked up the front steps. As I reached for the door handle, I noticed something tucked into the frame. A folded piece of paper. I pulled it out, unfolded it. The message was handwritten in sharp, angry strokes. You don't deserve her. You don't deserve this. Leave now or we'll make you leave. No signature, but I knew who it was from. I crumpled the note, shoved it in my pocket, and walked inside. The house was exactly as I'd left it. Empty, quiet, waiting. I went to the kitchen, made myself something to eat, and sat at the table where we used to have breakfast together. She'd always been a morning person. Used to wake up early, make coffee, sit by the window and watch the sun come up. I'd stumble down an hour later, and she'd already have half the day planned out. I missed that. Missed the routine. Missed the easy comfort of knowing someone else was in the house, moving through the rooms, existing in the same space. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Silence on the other end, then breathing, heavy, deliberate. I know you're there, I said. More silence. Then a click. The line went dead. I set the phone down, stared at it like it might ring again. It didn't. But 10 minutes later, another text came through. Different number this time. Check your mailbox. I stood, walked to the front door, and stepped outside. The mailbox was at the end of the driveway, a good 100 yards from the house. I walked down slowly, gravel crunching under my feet, eyes scanning the tree line for anything out of place. The mailbox was old, iron, the kind that had been there for decades. I opened it. Inside was a single envelope. No stamp, no address. Just my name written across the front in the same handwriting as the note from earlier. I pulled it out, opened it. Inside was a newspaper clipping. Old, yellowed, dated, 12 years ago. The headline read, "Local man arrested in domestic dispute." My stomach dropped. I scanned the article. It was short. Just a few paragraphs about an incident at an apartment complex. A noise complaint. Police called. A man taken into custody. No charges filed. Case dismissed. The man's name was mine. I stared at the clipping, mind racing. That night. I remembered that night. My ex-girlfriend and I had gotten into a screaming match. The neighbors called the cops. I was arrested, spent 4 hours in a cell, and then released when she admitted nothing physical had happened. The charges were dropped. The record was sealed. But someone had dug it up. Someone had found it. And now they were going to use it. Another text. Anger issues? Violent tendencies? Maybe she wasn't as safe with you as everyone thought. I crumpled the clipping in my fist, took a long, slow breath, forced myself to stay calm. They were trying to bait me, trying to make me react, trying to build a narrative that I was unstable, dangerous, unfit to inherit anything. I walked back to the house, pulled out my phone, and called Cole. "They're coming after my character," I said. "What happened?" I told him about the note, the clipping, the texts. Cole was quiet for a moment. "Do you still have the clipping?" "Yeah." "Good. Bring it tomorrow. We'll add harassment to the counterclaim. They're building our case for us." "What if they leak this to the press?" I asked. "Then we leak the recordings," Cole said simply. "Mutually assured destruction. They smear you, we bury them. But I don't think they'll risk it. Not yet. Right now they're just testing you, seeing if you'll fold." "I'm not folding." "Good. Then let them keep digging. Every move they make just gives us more ammunition." We hung up. I sat down at the kitchen table and forced myself to eat, even though I'd lost my appetite. I needed to stay sharp, needed to keep my head clear. As the sun started to set, I heard a car pull up outside. I stood, walked to the window, looked out. A black sedan. Expensive. Tinted windows. It idled at the end of the driveway for a long moment, engine running. Then the driver's side door opened. Garrett stepped out. He didn't walk toward the house. Just stood there beside the car, hands in his pockets, staring up at the building like he was seeing it for the first time. I watched him. Didn't move. Didn't go outside. Just watched. After a few minutes, he got back in the car and drove away. But the message was clear. He was circling, testing the perimeter, trying to figure out his next move. I closed the curtains and locked the doors. Then I went upstairs, pulled out the USB drive, and watched her videos one more time. I needed to remember why I was doing this, needed to hear her voice, needed to be reminded that this fight wasn't about pride or revenge. It was about honoring the choice she'd made when she had nothing left but the truth. And I wasn't going to let them take that from her. Not now, not ever. The story broke 3 days later. I was in the kitchen making breakfast when my phone started buzzing nonstop. Text after text, call after call. I picked it up and saw notifications flooding in. News alerts, social media tags, messages from people I hadn't talked to in years. I opened one of the articles. The headline hit me like a punch to the gut. Deceased heiress's husband accused of coercion. Family claims manipulation in estate transfer. Below it was a photo of me. Not a flattering one. It looked like it had been pulled from social media, cropped and edited to make me look as unflattering as possible. Dark circles under my eyes. Unshaven. Tired. I scrolled down. The article was brutal. It quoted Victoria extensively. She claimed I'd isolated her daughter in her final months. That I'd pressured her into signing documents she didn't understand. That I'd taken advantage of a vulnerable, dying woman for financial gain. Garrett was quoted too. My sister was not in her right mind. She was medicated, scared, and manipulated by someone who saw an opportunity. We're fighting this because it's what she would have wanted if she'd been able to think clearly. There were more quotes from family friends, from distant relatives, all saying the same thing, that I was an outsider, that I'd never belonged, that this was a betrayal of everything their family stood for. And then, buried near the bottom, was the kicker. Court records show that Harris was arrested 12 years ago in connection with a domestic dispute, though charges were later dropped. Family members suggest this pattern of volatile behavior may have extended into his marriage. I set the phone down, stared at the wall, felt the room tilt slightly. They'd done it. They'd leaked the arrest, twisted it, made it sound like I was some kind of abuser who'd terrorized my wife into submission. My phone rang. Cole. "Have you seen it?" he asked. "Yeah." "Don't respond, don't comment, don't post anything on social media. Let me handle this." "They're destroying me," I said quietly. "They're trying to," Cole corrected, "but we've got the evidence. We've got the truth. This is a PR move, not a legal one. They're trying to turn public opinion against you before the case even goes to court." "Is it working?" He paused. "It doesn't matter. Public opinion doesn't decide court cases. Evidence does. And we have all the evidence." "When do we file the counterclaim?" "Tomorrow." I was going to wait another week, but given this, we need to move now. We hit them hard and we hit them fast. "Do it," I said. We hung up. I tried to go about my day, tried to ignore the constant buzzing of my phone. But it was impossible. The story was everywhere. Local news, regional outlets. Even a few national sites had picked it up. "Gold digger husband steals family fortune," read one headline. Another, "Did he marry her to murder her?" That one made me sick. I hadn't even been accused of anything close to that, but the implication was there. Subtle, poisonous. I stopped reading. Stopped checking my phone. Just sat in the study and tried to breathe. Around noon, someone knocked on the door. I looked through the window and saw a news van parked at the end of the driveway, a reporter and a cameraman standing on my porch. I didn't answer. Just watched through the curtain as they knocked again, waited, then eventually gave up and left. But they didn't go far. The van stayed parked just outside the property line, waiting. By evening, there were 3 more vans. A small crowd of reporters had gathered at the gates. I could see them through the window, cameras ready, hoping I'd come outside. I didn't. I stayed inside, lights off, curtains drawn, feeling like a prisoner in a house that was supposed to be my refuge. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized, my boss from the community center where I used to work. "Hey, Tom," I said. "Andrew." His voice was careful, too careful. "I need to talk to you about something." My stomach sank. "What's going on?" "Look, you know I've always liked you. You're a good guy. Great with the kids. But given everything that's come out in the news, the board has asked me to put you on temporary leave." "Temporary leave?" "Just until this all gets sorted out. We can't have this kind of attention on the center. Parents are already asking questions. We need to protect the organization." "I didn't do anything wrong, Tom." "I know, I believe you, but it doesn't matter what I believe. It matters what people think, and right now the optics are bad." I closed my eyes. "How long?" "I don't know. Maybe a few weeks, maybe longer. It depends on how this plays out." "Am I fired?" "No, not fired, just on leave. Unpaid." "Of course, unpaid." "Okay," I said quietly. "I'm sorry, Andrew. I really am." He hung up. I set the phone down and sat in the dark. They were taking everything, my reputation, my job, my peace. Piece by piece, they were dismantling my life, and I couldn't stop them. I thought about calling someone, a friend, a family member, someone who could tell me it was going to be okay. But I didn't have anyone like that. My parents were gone. I didn't have siblings. My friends were mostly work acquaintances, and given what had just happened with Tom, I doubted any of them would want to be associated with me right now. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. I stood, walked to the liquor cabinet in the study, and poured myself a drink. Whiskey. The expensive kind that her father used to keep for special occasions. I downed it in one gulp, felt the burn, poured another. Then I stopped, set the glass down, took a breath. No, I wasn't doing this. I wasn't going to fall apart. That's what they wanted. They wanted me to crack, to do something stupid, to prove their narrative right. I walked upstairs to her old room, sat at the desk, opened a laptop and plugged in the USB drive one more time. I clicked on the video labeled Andrew and watched it again. Her face appeared, tired but determined. "Hi, baby. If you're watching this, then I'm gone." I watched the whole thing. Let her words wash over me. Let her voice remind me why I was doing this. I gave you the house because it's the only thing in this family that ever felt like home. And that's because of you. When the video ended, I sat there for a long time. Then I opened a blank document and started typing. I wrote down everything, every threat, every text, every article, every lie. I documented it all, time-stamped it, organized it into a coherent narrative. If they wanted a war, I'd give them a war. But I'd fight it on my terms, with the truth. By the time I finished, it was past midnight. I saved the document, backed it up in 3 different places, and sent a copy to Cole. Then I went to bed, not because I thought I'd sleep, but because I needed to at least try. I lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle around me, listening to the reporters outside, listening to the sound of my own breathing. And somewhere in that silence, I found something I hadn't expected. Resolve. They could take my job. They could smear my name. They could camp outside my door and write whatever lies they wanted. But they couldn't take this house. They couldn't take her choice. And they couldn't make me disappear. I'd been quiet for too long, polite for too long, tried to keep the peace for too long. But peace was over. Tomorrow, we'd file the counterclaim. We'd expose every recording, every email, every piece of evidence that showed exactly who they were and what they'd planned. And then we'd let the world decide who the real villain was. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in days I felt something close to calm. The storm was coming, but I was ready for it. Cole filed the counterclaim at 9 in the morning. By 10, my phone was ringing off the hook again, but this time the tone had shifted. "Andrew, it's Cole. We just got a call from their attorney. They want to meet." I sat up straighter. "Already?" They weren't expecting the recordings. We included transcripts in the filing. Now they're scrambling. They want to talk settlement before this goes any further. What kind of settlement? They drop the contest. You keep the house. In exchange, you agree not to pursue criminal charges and you sign an NDA. I thought about that. About Victoria's voice on those recordings. Cold and calculating. About Garrett's laugh as he joked about getting rid of me. About every cruel word they'd said when they thought no one was listening. "No," I said. Cole paused. "Andrew, this is a good offer. You get what you want. Clean break, no more fighting." "I don't want a clean break. I want them to answer for what they did." "That's not how this works. If you push for criminal charges, it could take years, cost you everything you have left, and there's no guarantee you'll win. Then we go to trial. Let a judge hear those recordings. Let the world know who they really are." Cole was quiet for a moment. "You're sure about this?" "Completely." "All right. Then we prepare for war." The meeting was set for 2 days later. Cole told me to expect their entire legal team. He told me to dress sharp, stay calm, and let him do most of the talking. But he also told me to be ready for anything. I spent those 2 days going through every piece of evidence again. I listened to the recordings until I had them memorized. I read through her journals, looking for anything else that might be useful. And I found something. Tucked between the pages of one of her older journals was a letter, unsealed, addressed to me but never sent. The date on it was from 4 years ago, long before she got sick. I unfolded it carefully. "Andrew, I don't know if I'll ever give this to you. Maybe I'm just writing it to process my own thoughts. But I need to say this somewhere. My family is planning something. I overheard Mom and Garrett talking last night about trusts and inheritance structures. They were talking about ways to protect assets in case I made poor decisions. They meant you. They were already planning how to cut you out, and we're not even married yet. I should be angry. I am angry. But mostly I'm just tired. Tired of fighting them. Tired of justifying my choices. Tired of being treated like I'm too naive to know what's good for me. But here's what they don't understand. You are what's good for me. You're the only person who's ever let me just exist, without needing me to be something else. And if they can't see that, then they don't see me either. I'm writing this down because I need to remember it. When things get hard, when they push back, when I start to doubt myself, I need to remember that choosing you was the smartest thing I ever did. And I'd do it again. Every single time. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my pocket. That letter was coming with me to the meeting. The day arrived. Cole picked me up in his car and we drove to a law office downtown. Tall building. Glass and steel. The kind of place designed to intimidate. We rode the elevator to the 14th floor. The receptionist led us to a conference room with a view of the entire city. Victoria, Garrett, and 3 attorneys were already seated on one side of the long table. Victoria looked older than I remembered, thinner. The confidence she'd worn like armor at Thanksgiving had cracked. Garrett sat beside her, arms crossed, jaw tight. We sat across from them. No one spoke at first. Then one of their attorneys, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes, opened a folder. Let's get to the point. This doesn't need to be complicated. You withdraw your counterclaim, we withdraw our contest. Everyone walks away. Cole leaned back in his chair. And the recordings? Sealed, never made public. You sign an agreement that prohibits you from discussing them with anyone. So you want him to pretend you didn't conspire to defraud him? Cole said evenly. The attorney's expression didn't change. We want to resolve this matter quietly and efficiently. I spoke up. What about an apology? All eyes turned to me. Victoria's face hardened. Garrett looked away. An apology? The attorney repeated. For what you said about her. For what you tried to do. For making her feel like she had to hide the truth from her own family. Victoria's voice was ice. We have nothing to apologize for. I pulled out the letter, unfolded it, and slid it across the table. She wrote this 4 years ago. She knew what you were. She knew what you'd do. And she spent the last years of her life protecting me from you. Victoria didn't touch the letter, didn't even look at it. Garrett finally spoke. You don't understand what it's like, being responsible for a legacy, for a name that means something. You're right, I said. I don't, because I was busy being responsible for a person. The room went silent. Cole cleared his throat. Here's our position. Mr. Harris keeps the house. You drop all claims. In exchange, we won't pursue criminal charges. But there will be no NDA. If anyone asks him about this, he's free to tell the truth. All of it. Unacceptable, the attorney said immediately. Then we'll see you in court, Cole replied, standing. I stood with him. We walked toward the door. Wait, Victoria said quietly. We stopped, turned. She was looking at the letter now. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked it up. She read it slowly. When she finished, she set it down and looked at me. She really believed that, Victoria said. Not a question, a realization. Yes, I said. Victoria closed her eyes. For just a moment she looked small, defeated. Then she opened them again, and the hardness returned. Fine, no NDA. But the recordings stay sealed unless we violate the agreement. Cole looked at me. I nodded. Deal, Cole said. The paperwork was drawn up within a week. Both sides signed. The house was officially, irrevocably mine. The case was closed. The reporters moved on to other stories. And just like that, it was over. But it didn't feel over. I stood in the driveway one evening, watching the sun set behind the oak trees. The property was quiet now. No news vans, no threatening letters, just silence. Cole had called earlier to congratulate me, told me I'd done the right thing, told me to enjoy my victory. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like I'd survived something. Barely. I walked back inside. The house felt bigger than ever, emptier. I'd won the fight, but I was still alone in a building filled with ghosts. I went upstairs to her room one last time, sat at the desk, looked out the window at the view she'd grown up with, and I made a decision. I couldn't live here, not like this, not surrounded by memories that belonged to a life I couldn't get back. This house was hers, and she'd given it to me, but keeping it felt like holding on to something that was meant to be let go. I called a real estate agent the next morning, put the house on the market. The listing went live 3 days later. Within a week, I had 5 offers. I accepted one from a young family with 2 kids. They reminded me of us. Young, hopeful, ready to make new memories. The day before closing, I walked through the house one final time. I touched the walls, stood in the rooms where we'd laughed, where we'd fought, where we'd held each other when the world got too heavy. I ended up in the study, her father's desk, the place where I'd discovered the truth. I opened the drawer, pulled out the USB drive, and held it in my palm. Then I put it in my pocket. Some things weren't meant to stay buried. I locked the door behind me and drove away. I didn't look back. 6 months later, I was standing on a beach 2,000 miles away. The sand was warm beneath my feet. The ocean stretched out forever, blue and endless and indifferent to everything I'd been through. I'd used the money from the house sale to start over. New city, new job, new life. I was teaching again, working with kids who needed someone to believe in them. It felt right. Felt like coming home to a version of myself I'd lost somewhere along the way. My phone buzzed. A text from Cole. Saw the news. Thought you'd want to know. I opened the link he sent. It was an article about the Thornfield family. Apparently, Garrett had been forced to step down from his position at the family company after financial irregularities came to light. Victoria had sold off several properties. The empire was crumbling. I closed the article. Didn't feel satisfaction, didn't feel vindication, just felt tired. I thought about her. About the choice she'd made. About the house she'd given me not because she wanted me to keep it, but because she wanted me to be free. Free to choose. Free to walk away if I needed to. Free to build something new. She'd known I couldn't stay there. Known I'd eventually need to let it go. The house wasn't the gift. The freedom was. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos. Found the one of us on that dock in Vermont. Young, smiling, unburdened. I whispered to the screen. I got out, just like you wanted. The waves crashed against the shore. Somewhere behind me, kids were laughing. Life was moving forward. And for the first time in a long time, so was I. I didn't belong in that house. I never did. But I belonged here, in this moment, in this choice. In this freedom she'd fought so hard to give me. And that was enough. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.